Parliamentarians urged to play a greater role in reforming the legal landscape surrounding domestic violence. The DAIC about to seal the deal on an MOU with its Martinique counterpart, plus Dominican men warned to watch their sexual habits because of their vulnerability to HIV. I'm Tues1stDec2k15News Baptist with the Channel 5 News. Details after this. Welcome back. First up, the Dominic Association of Industry and Commerce and the Martinique Chamber of Commerce are a step closer to a memorandum of understanding. This as executive members of the DAIC visited Martinique from the 25th to 27th of November on the invitation of the Martinique Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The DAIC delegation made up Board Director Anthony Joseph, Vice President Kira Thompson-Ed, and President Jeffrey Baptiste.
We confirmed what we had always suspected, that there's a great appetite from the Martinique private sector for some level of involvement in the economy in Dominica. We met on the Thursday afternoon about 15 business leaders. So we had a meeting with the business community of Martinique, and I say just about 15, or maybe a bit more than that, of prominent business leaders, business owners, and business leaders in the Martinique, from the Martinique private sector. And the engagement was around the DIC, presenting to them pretty much the state of affairs in Dominica, post-tropical storm Erika, but more so what we see as potential opportunities for partnership and collaboration between the private sectors.
It is expected that a formal agreement with the Martinique Chamber of Commerce will take place to foster the relationship.
The Martinique Chamber will lead, somewhere in early January 2016, a trade mission from Martinique to Dominica. And the intent is we'll have maybe upwards of 10 businesses who will participate in that trade mission. And when we get to when the Martinique Chamber gets to Dominic in 2016, we will sit and we will sign an MOU, that is the Martinique Chamber and the DIC, where we'll outline the areas we will collaborate and partner for maybe the next 24 months thereabout.
DAIC intends on engaging the Ministry of Agriculture and Manufacturers Association to identify more opportunities available within the agriculture and manufacturing sectors here for that purpose. Meantime, DAIC has already identified opportunities for partnership with the Martinique private sector.
Agro-processing is one. We had some discussions with a few business owners who made the point to us that one particular businessman suggested that he was buying a lot of his raw material, and he used specifically passion fruit syrup from Brazil. And we're thinking, given the close proximity between Dominic and Martinique, given our long-standing friendship and history together as two peoples, given the agricultural richness of Dominica, if you will, it just seemed logical to me that some of that business should be coming from Dominica and not as far as Brazil.
Dominican men are being urged to practice safe sex as they still remain most at risk for contracting HIV. Andrea Louis reports.
The country joined the rest of the world on Tuesday to observe World AIDS Day. On World AIDS Day, recognized on 1st December, countries unite to fight against HIV, show support for people living with HIV, and remember the people who have died as a result. Globally, there is an estimated 34 million people living with HIV. The virus was discovered in 1984, and since then, an estimated 35 million people have died from HIV or AIDS. In Dominica, the reported number of cases for 2015 thus far is 13, a drop from the 18 reported cases of 2014. The country has an annual average of 12 reported cases.
The epidemic continues to be male-dominated. So whenever we have new cases every year, we find that up to about 70% of our cases are male. That has not changed over the period from 1987 to now. And even, for example, last year, where we had 18 new cases, we find that we had 16 of them being male and just 2 being female. So far for the year, we've noticed the trend has practically remained the same. We have about 13 new cases for the year, and the majority has also been male. So this is definitely a concern for us, particularly because you find that the most affected age group is the 25 to 49, which is your productive age group. And if we are looking at sustainable development goals, then we want to ensure that our productive sector remains productive.
The regional theme for World AIDS Day 2015 is Ending the AIDS Epidemic as part of the Sustainable Development Goals. However, in Dominica, the local theme, Youth Be Selfish, Let's End AIDS, was created to target the youthful population.
AIDS can be ended in any region of the world as long as you have the necessary structures in place to maintain that process or to get that process, to make that process possible. And then when we talk about ending AIDS, it has to do with ensuring that people remain virally suppressed so that they never progress to AIDS. So somebody can be HIV positive, but they do not have to progress to AIDS. We always talk about the simple ABCs of prevention. So you look at abstinence, which always works. You look at being faithful to one partner who is also faithful to you. You look at using condoms, because condoms protect if they are used consistently and correctly. Okay, and of course, if somebody still becomes HIV positive after practicing all those prevention tips that we give them, then being HIV positive means that you can be managed.
Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS, is a disease which results from prolonged untreated case of human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. People infected with HIV, when taking their medication and proper care of themselves, are able to lead full and productive lives. Andrea Louis, Channel 5 News.
Still on the health scene, the sexual and reproductive health of citizens displaced by the passage of Tropical Storm Erica has been given significant attention by the Bureau of Gender Affairs. Andrea Louis has more.
This was the aim of a recently concluded two-day workshop conducted by a reproductive health advisor from the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, sub-regional office in Jamaica. The Minimal Initial Service Package, MISP, is a series of crucial actions required to respond to reproductive health needs at the onset of a humanitarian crisis.
When there is a disaster, people think that's only food, shelter, and water is important, but it's not true. There are more important things. During disasters, women continue getting pregnant, women continue delivering babies, persons continue having sex, people continue getting infected with HIV or sexually transmitted infections. Women continue being victims of sexual violence and gender-based violence.
The training session was for first-time responders, targeting members of community-based organizations and health personnel.
We start by training the people about what are the most common causes of problems that affects directly women and girls. And then we train on how to prevent unnecessary deaths. We train the people about how people who are already at risk became most at risk and more vulnerable. The other aspect that we also cover is planning and coordination. Because one of the things that we also see in emergencies is that different organizations, NGOs, governments, donors, you name it, they bring things that not necessarily are needed, and that creates more chaos.
Aguilar says that data reaching him thus far does not indicate any immediate cause for serious concern. This workshop formed part of technical support to the Commonwealth of Dominica by the United Nations Population Fund.
In other major developments, legal reform in relation to domestic violence is something the Dominica National Council of Women considers a burning issue deserving more attention. The DNCW is calling for increased advocacy on domestic violence at Parliament.
We really need to continue to have those issues at a national level for discussion. Let's begin at the level of Parliament. We have women there who should be, both women and men, who should be gender sensitive. We want from the DNCW begin to have a bilateral discussion on the issue of domestic violence. And let us begin there, because it's a political issue, it's not a personal issue, and it's also a national issue. Because when one woman has been killed or one woman has been affected, the whole nation should be concerned.
Dublin Prince says establishing a family court could provide a better support system for victims of domestic violence.
That is an issue that has been spoken about even by the Bureau of Gender Affairs, by some lawyers, by the Dominican National Council of Women itself. And because it gives women and those who have that experience that comfort to tell their story. No longer should a woman who have been raped or sexually assaulted should go through a situation where she has to decide, or her parents have to decide, should that case be continued because it's a criminal act? Should that case be continued, or should she be compensated, and when it goes before the court, that the case is no longer because of that situation? So we're calling for a family court, we're calling for legal reform, and we're calling for more advocates on that issue of domestic violence.
Meantime, Channel 5 News took to the streets for the public's views on the domestic violence issue, and this is what some people said.
It's a tradition in the country that domestic violence is the silent okay crime. Even at the level of the courts, where it is brought before the courts, the punishment meted out to offenders are absolutely a slap on the hand, and it is time that the judicial system itself takes a deeper view into within the confines of the law. And if the laws has to be changed and amended to ensure that offenders are given more serious punishments, and those persons within the families or within the society covering up domestic violence, they too should be prosecuted before the law.
Sometimes certain things are just symptoms of a bigger problem. We might find ourselves just treating symptoms. From my observation, these are things that are really lacking in our country.
Women should not be seen as easy target for a man who has an issue. Males need to be made aware of that, whether it's physical, brutal, verbal abuse is not acceptable. And they need to legislate against all of that and make sure that, any kind of action will be taken to court, and whether you lose your life or you're in prison for life, that's one of the things that you have to be made accountable for.
As I'm concerned, any gentleman shouldn't lift their hand on a woman, you know what I mean? Or vice versa, the woman shouldn't hit the man. You understand? Especially where kids involved. Because when the kids see violence in the home, they're going to copy it, you understand?
You're watching Channel 5 News, a look at a resettlement site for people displaced by Tropical Storm Erica. That and more when we return. Thanks for staying with us. Work has started in an effort to transform over 50 acres of carefully selected land in Belleville-Chopin to resettle residents of Petite-Savanne displaced by Tropical Storm Erica. Julian Morris reports.
The forested area is not completely cleared yet, but work is ongoing to have it surveyed and the necessary studies carried out. The patch of land that you see behind me, it's of interest because this is the area that the people from Petite-Savanne, some of the people, if not all, from Petite-Savanne will be relocated to. And the minister, of course, has made reference to this community, which I believe they will be acquiring 56 acres of land in this community for the resettlement of people from Petite-Savanne displaced as a result of Tropical Storm Erica. So this is the plot of land that we wanted to show you, just to give you an idea of where in Belleville-Chopin that these people from Petite-Savanne will be relocated to. The spot at Belleville-Chopin seems to be very promising, and from what we saw walking through the bushes, the land is generally flat.
We want to ensure that we take the opportunity to do things differently, to ensure at the end of the day, safety is not compromised at any stage. And of course, the safety has to start with the site selection. The site selection, again, has to be subjected to very rigorous and intense engineering, environmental, as well as hazard risk analysis to ensure that all we mitigate and design to withstand any of the adverse hazard we may have. Of course, we have to look at the situation coming from Erica, the incident of flooding. From flooding, of course, you'll have mudslides, you have landslide. We also have to understand that we're still within the region with a very dynamic hurricane belt. So hurricane force winds is something that we have to deal with. Of course, we have seismic activity that we also have to be mindful of. So all the necessary hazards that we normally expose and subjected to will be taken into consideration and make sure that the site will be subjected to various very extensive and very complete analysis as far as those conditions are concerned.
The site in Bellevue-Chopin is just one of 10 potential ones identified for resettlement, but government will not automatically build on all these sites. Mr. Blackmore says these sites will be thoroughly examined and shortlisted. They must also have adequate space to provide facilities for the social and economic well-being of the people. That's a view shared by the Minister for Planning and Economic Development.
Our intention is not to take the people and put them under cliffs, under mountains, under the edges of the rivers for floods and whatnot. So we are selecting carefully, and we think that Bellevue-Chopin is an ideal piece of land. We'll select a proper piece of land and carry the necessary studies to make sure that it's suitable for that sort of development.
In our next report, we'll take you to Center in Granby, where work is ongoing to accommodate Dubic residents also displaced by Tropical Storm Erica. Julian Morris reporting for Channel 5 News.
Heads of government have a December 12 cutoff date to reach an agreement on coming up with measures to reduce the impact of climate change. Caribbean heads are among world leaders holding talks at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris. The Caribbean community is approaching this with a collaborative voice with St. Lucia's Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony as CARICOM's lead head of government on climate change. Government negotiators from 195 countries on Tuesday were left to work on a draft document looking at reduction of gas emissions and the global temperature. The main target is to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. Reuters reported that the main sticking point for climate change negotiators is how to come up with the billions of dollars needed to finance the cleaner energy sources that are badly needed if emerging countries are to develop without relying heavily on fossil fuels. In wake of the COP21 conference, a group of Dominicans with interest in environmental protection held a Climate Change Day of Action on Saturday.
The whole event in Paris now is to reach an agreement that will keep the rise in temperature and global warming to 2 degrees above what it was before the Industrial Revolution started. But if 1 degree produces Erica and Katrina, in fact, it wasn't even 1 degree with Katrina, it was 0.7 degrees. It is now 1 degree. It is now producing these storms. The truth is, can we even adapt to 2 degrees?
Pope Francis, head of the Catholic community, has urged action on climate change in a letter to his clergy. Catholic Bishop Gabriel Mauser presented it to the audience at Saturday's activity.
A very solid scientific consensus indicates that we are presently witnessing a disturbing warming of the climatic system. So why now? Why are we so concerned about what is going on? It comes at a time when governments, heads of industry, investors and environmentalists across the world are debating policy measures to address climate change. Pope Francis has made clear his intention to influence the 21st session of the Conference of Parties, that is what we call COP21. The faith of Christians, therefore, must motivate them to care for nature and for the most vulnerable.
In more news, Director of the Drug Abuse Prevention Unit hopes that a rehabilitation center for vagrants will be introduced soon. Lurian Graham Carter has more.
Jacinta Banis says human rights was among topics discussed at the recent meeting in Colombia as part of preparation for the United Nations General Assembly, UNGA, in New York next year. Dominica was among 4 other Caribbean islands represented at the meeting. They addressed social and economic impact of drugs and the issue of drug policy among major topics.
The issue of human rights, because they're looking at the consumer, not as a paro again, but looking at the as a consumer. So they said, okay, you have to have human rights when it comes to dealing with persons, who we call vagrants, because they have rights as well, and the social and economic impact.
Banis says a rehabilitation center is part of government's plans.
In Dominica, we do not have a rehabilitation center, so that is something that we have made. We have made some points, made some intervention in that area. So I'm hoping that probably by the time I leave office, we will have a drug rehab center in Dominica, because it's very important. So in terms of, as I said, so one of the discussions we had was on human rights. They have to have access to medicine, access to, just like you having access, they too should have access. So access to medication would include rehabilitation. So that is something that we have to definitely become more serious about.
The dialogue on drug policy saw representatives from the UK, US, Switzerland, the Caribbean, and Africa. Bernice says the Caribbean was underrepresented at the meeting. She recommends that through CARICOM, more countries should attend to present more ideas and topics affecting the region.
And Acting Minister for Social Services, Justina Charles, calls on Dominicans to contribute more to the care of the elderly.
On Monday, members of the President's Charities Foundation, including the acting president, as well as the acting Minister for Social Services, visited the Dominic Infirmary. The visit forms part of Residents' Week. Justina Charles acknowledged residents of the infirmary for their contribution to society before their retirement to the elderly home.
In whatever field that you did it, whether you are a farmer, même si vous êtes labourer, whether you are a fisherman, whether you are a nurse, a health personnel, a public officer, whatever you did, là où t'es jeune and you could do it, ou faire pour aider nous tout to prepare a way for all of us that are at the back. The elderly, they have rights. They are human beings just like all of us who have all our life and energy. At one time, they had that level of vigor and energy and enthusiasm that caused them to do quite a bit for us. Now they are not able. We need to respect them for who they are.
The minister also appealed for the protection of the elderly.
So we need to be able to care for them and give them that level of protection. Respect their rights. They love their rosaries. We know our seniors love to pray. They love their rosaries. Those kinds of things, we cannot take it away from them. You will be held responsible and guilty. When you go home, you have a conscience to deal with. All of us have a conscience to deal with. So let us ensure that we can give them that level of respect that they need.
The President's Charities Foundation also presented the infirmary with its yearly contribution from the proceeds of the President's Charities Dinner. Residents Awareness Week ends on December 4.
Sports is next with Kenny Williams.
We bounce off with basketball. The Dominica Amateur Basketball Association will be hosting an open forum on Wednesday at Prevost Cinema Mall to discuss the most efficient way forward for basketball in Dominica. Some items on the agenda for discussion are the current state of basketball, solutions to shortcomings, management of the sport, and formation of clubs. The forum is expected to begin at 5 p.m. Still in basketball, five-time NBA champion Kobe Bryant to retire at the end of the season. In a letter entitled Dear Basketball, Bryant says, quote, "My heart can take the pounding, my heart can handle the grind, but my body knows it's time to say goodbye," end quote. The two-time Olympic gold medalist has scored 32,683 points during his 20-year career with the LA Lakers to rank third in the NBA's all-time list. Moving on to cricket. The West Indies tour of Australia is carded for Brisbane, where the teams will face off starting Wednesday. The Windies squad selected to face Australia include Devendra Bishu, Jermaine Blackwood, Carlos Brathwaite, Craig Brathwaite, Darren Bravo, Rajendra Chandrika, Shane Dorwich, Shannon Gabriel, Jason Holder, Shai Hope, Denish Ramdin, Kemar Roach, Marlon Samuels, Jerome Taylor, and Jomel Warrican. Still in cricket, the 30-20 between England and Pakistan ended in a tie after 40 overs of play on Monday. England batted first to be all out for 154 for 8, with Vince top scoring 46. Tanvir and Afridi took 2 wickets each for Pakistan. Malik scored 75 to help bring his team to 154 for 7. Willie picked up 3 for 46 in favor of England. On the football scene, Portersville Savannah was the battleground for a match between Dominica State College and Isaiah Thomas Secondary, where the match points at the end of regular time were 2-1 in favor of Dominica State College in the under-20 category. Michael Abraham and Agassi Moreau scored for State College, while Kellan Revere from the back of the net for Isaiah Thomas Secondary. Then over at Portsmouth, home advantage did not favor Portsmouth Secondary when they lost to Goodwill 4-1, also in the under-20 level. Delroy Parker, Elton Raphael, Curdell Joseph, and Dequan Honore each scored 1 for the visitors, while Corbin Paul scored the lone goal for the home team. Bringing you some more football. The DFA Flow Premier League continues at the Windsor Park Sports Stadium with football action on Wednesday.
On Wednesday, the first round in the Premier League will come to an end when Caribbean Coal Harlem United takes on Steinman Middleham United at 5 p.m. at the Windsor Park Stadium. Then the second round action will kick off on Saturday with a doubleheader at the Windsor Park Stadium, with Caribbean Coal Harlem United taking on Malta India Icons Football Club at 3 p.m. to be followed by Surgical Southeast versus Northern Concrete and Steel Bombers at 5 p.m. In another doubleheader on Sunday, league leaders Dubla Football Club will take on defending champions Exodus Football Club at 3 p.m., while at 5 p.m. it will be Steinman Middleham United versus Baffin State Football Club.
And finally, St. John's Academy beat Convent High 27-20 in the under-16 category in Monday's edition of the Secondary Schools Netball Championships. Patrice Roberts scored 20 from 36 attempts, while Christelle Ferrell secured 7 from 11 for St. John's. Meantime, for the Convent High, Angelique Sorrendo contributed 19, while Soraya Charles scored 1. That's all the time we have for sports. I am Kenny Williams. Join us again next time.
Your weather report is next.
Good evening to you viewers and welcome to tonight's weather broadcast. A surface trough continues to linger across the Lesser Antilles today, generating instability across the area. Today's visible satellite image showed a reduction in low-level clouds across Dominica and an increase in high-level clouds, resulting in generally fair skies. Meanwhile, convection with some embedded thunderstorm cells were observed to the northeast of the Antilles, associated with that surface trough. And radar imagery indicated showers and possible thunderstorm activity associated with the trough. Across Dominica, only a few isolated showers were observed during the course of the day. Tonight's weather is expected to be fair to partly cloudy with a few scattered showers. By tomorrow, mostly cloudy skies with scattered showers and possible thunderstorm activity are expected mainly during the morning. Residents in areas prone to flooding, landslides and falling rocks do continue to be vigilant. Sea conditions tomorrow will be moderate in open water with waves peaking up to 7 feet. Small craft operators and sea bathers do continue to exercise some caution. And looking ahead, fair to partly cloudy skies with a few scattered showers are expected on Thursday, with mostly cloudy skies, scattered showers and possible thunderstorm activity expected yet again by Friday. And across the Lesser Antilles tomorrow, fair to partly cloudy skies are expected across the extreme southern portion of the chain, with showers and thunderstorm activity across the windwards and the Leeward Islands. And on the international scene tomorrow, rain is expected in New York, partly cloudy skies in Miami, overcast skies in London, there's a chance of thunderstorm in Caracas and clear skies in Beijing. The sun will rise tomorrow at 6:17 a.m. and will set at 5:33 p.m. For further information, call the weather hotline at 447-5555 or visit our website at weather.gov.dm. Thank you for joining us this evening. Have a good night.
That's news, the headlines again. Parliamentarians urged to play a greater role in reforming the legal landscape surrounding domestic violence. The DAIC about to seal the deal on an MOU with its Martinique counterpart, plus Dominican men warned to watch their sexual habits because of their vulnerability to HIV. Email us at news@marpin2k4.com. You can also access our past newscasts on our YouTube channel. On behalf of the production team, I'm Idona Jean-Baptiste. Thanks for watching. Join us again tomorrow.